It's questions week as we get set for media days. My three biggest questions about Oregon start with Dante Moore, but that's not the only answer.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, and thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. Thoughts on the Penn State game? Could College Gameday make their way to Happy Valley? That could be exciting. Will the passing game be different with Ross Douglas as the wide receivers coach? That's all on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So I was thinking about questions because there are going to be a lot of questions asked this week. I'll be down at Big Ten Media Days. Dan Lanning will be there. He will speak, of course. Bryce Betcher will be there. Mateo Uyunglele will be there. And Kenyon Sadiq will be there. If you have a question you want asked to any of those individuals, shoot it my way. I will do my best to get it asked. The players are easier to get questions asked to than Coach Lanning, but all can be accomplished. But it got me thinking about the biggest questions for this Oregon team. And I start with Dante Moore because the rest of Oregon's roster, I think, is in really good shape. Through all the nitpicking and dissecting of this roster and the players and the questions that I do have and I think are fair to ask about this Oregon team, I think they're in a really good spot with the way they've recruited, the players they do have coming back, guys they brought in. I expect it to be good at some point, particularly once the offensive line gets settled after the first couple of games, and I don't think it'll necessarily take as long as it did last year because they know who they're going to play at center, and it'll be Poncho. At some point, it's just going to come down to Dante Moore. Does he have the it factor? Is he that guy? Can he be that guy? We know physically he can be that guy. Ty Thompson physically could have been that guy. But alas, we know he was not. So, and no, I am not saying that Dante Moore is Ty Thompson. I'm just saying we haven't seen him prove that he can be a Heisman finalist one day. When does he show that? How early does it arrive? How early does he settle into the Oregon offense this year? When does he look like he's comfortable in command, making the right reads, getting into the correct protections, getting the ball out of his hands, not holding it too long, which was a problem he had at UCLA, not staring receivers down, another problem he had at UCLA, very common for a true freshman, of course. Like all of those things, how quickly, if at all, does he move past them? How quickly does he become a top-tier starting quarterback in the Big Ten? Because we know that his arm talent is so crazy. I mean, it's crazy. If you haven't seen him throw in person before, he throws an incredibly beautiful, tight spiral and in just a phenomenally catchable ball. And his pinpoint accuracy is kind of what was, he's got a strong arm, don't get me wrong. The accuracy and the quick release and the arm angles, I think, are what made him a five-star quarterback coming out of high school. So how quickly can he get acclimated to being Oregon's starting quarterback, presuming he is Oregon's starting quarterback, of course, which I expect him to be. I think other people do as well. I'll just let you know right now, if you send me a question to ask Coach Lanning this week, I will not be the guy that asks him to name a starting quarterback because there is no way that Dan Lanning's going to reveal that piece of information. It's not. I'm sure he'd tell you the Duck was in Australia. The Duck is truly a mascot after my own heart. P. Sherman, 42 Wallaby Way, Sydney. Come on, man. Like the Duck is the best. Anyway, so I'm sure he'd tell you that. He's not going to tell you who's starting at quarterback. So I think quarterback questions towards Coach Lanning have to be pretty targeted, specific, and not in the direction of have you named to start, who is it going to be? That I don't think we'll get anything this week on that front. It is not a coincidence. The three guys who are coming down are two defensive players and a tight end who is, of course, really exciting. I think we're all pretty excited about Kenyon Sadiq being tight end one this year, but there's no quarterback there, because that would just cause a lot of questions and having to answer and all this stuff, and he doesn't want to go through that. I get it. So Dante Moore is question number one. And my everydayers know what my next answer is going to be. It's a secondary. What are you going? Who? First of all, who? I know Dylan Thieneman's starting. I think Jalil Florence and Ife Obadegwu were the two starting corners. Who's the other safety? Who's the nickel? How do they mesh? What do they do compared to the guys you had last year? You don't have a ton of experience unless you were to lean more on Theron Johnson, the Northwestern transfer, and Jadon Kennedy, the Ole Miss transfer, who I think is more of a depth piece, and I hope is more of a depth piece, because the word on him when he came over from Ole Miss was, yeah, he's had moments, but he's not, he commits a few too many penalties. He's not, he's not a liability, but he's just kind of there. So who in the secondary, but also how? How do they blend together? And I'm migrating mentally into the phase where I don't want summer to end. I love summer. Summer is great. I'll be honest. I got a pretty good schedule going here with my shows and golfing. I got back from a tournament earlier today. Like, it's good. I'm really enjoying it. Oregon summers, 10 out of 10, 5 stars, no notes. I'm getting to the point where, boy, football's close. Like, we're really close. And mentally, with questions like Dante Moore or the secondary, I'm starting to migrate from, is this going to be a problem, to, boy, I'm so excited to see something that I don't know. I mean, I was excited to see Oregon last year, of course, because I felt like I had a really good idea of what the team was going to be. And after the first 2 weeks, that was the team we saw for most of the season. This year, the excitement for me is rooted in, I don't know a lot of things. And you know what? That's exciting. Take the punches as they come. The third one, though, is what I don't think should be overlooked. I'm really interested to see what happens with the Oregon running game. And some of this comes back to the offensive line. But I think kind of quietly, not if you're an everydayer on this show, of course, and I appreciate all my everydayers out there very much, and everybody that's listening to or watching the show. I've brought this up from time to time to try to keep it in your guys' minds going into the year. Oregon's running numbers per game have declined pretty markedly over the last couple of seasons. Year one, with Kenny Dillingham in 2022, Oregon ran for just over 215 yards a game. They took a step back to 184 in Will Stein's first year being the offensive coordinator, and last year was 157. That's not where I think Dan Lanning would like the splits to be. So I would like to see, statistically, the Oregon running game get back to being around 200 yards a game, create a few more explosives, and not rely, so especially with a new starting quarterback in Dante Moore, not make him do what Dylan Gabriel and Bo Nix did for you last year, which was be Heisman finalists at quarterback. Well, a great way to do that, have a more productive and consistent running game, and certainly getting off to a stronger start in the first couple of weeks of the season would help that tremendously. But, at the end of this year, I would love to look back and say, hey, the running numbers, just from a yardage per game standpoint, it ticked back up. Because being under 160, I think that's too low for where Oregon should be able to get to with their offensive line. And I want Makhi Hughes to have the opportunity to showcase what he can do, because I think he's going to be a really, really good back for the Ducks this year. We'll see if it's a 2-year career with the Ducks or just one season. But those are the 3 biggest questions I have. If you have questions, drop them in the comments below. I might talk about them on Tuesday's show. But those are my top 3 questions for the Ducks going into this year. A question about the Penn State game that needs to be answered. It just won't for a little while. First, this episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is way more than just a budgeting app. It is a complete and total financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Do you have that one financial goal, whatever it may be, that's been nagging in the back of your mind? It's just sitting there. You keep putting it in the back burner, keep putting it off, and you want to finally get there. Monarch Money is here to help you do just that. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Check them out at monarchmoney.com. All right, second segment, sip as always, and we're ready to go. The Penn State game is going to be really fun. Like I was saying earlier, I'm slowly but surely migrating from anxious, nervous, unsure to excited that I don't really know what to expect. And you know what? I was getting a good amount of pushback the other day when I said best case scenario for this Oregon team's 11-1. Plenty of people feel like best case scenario is 12-0. I would love nothing more than to be wrong about that. And maybe they'll lose the Penn State game by a field goal, go 11-1, and I'll have to come on the show, look back and go, hey, I was wrong. Like they could have won that Penn State game. They had a better chance than I thought they were going to have. I would love for that to be the case. Absolutely love it. So there are a lot of questions that you can ask about the Penn State game. I've talked about them a good amount here during the offseason with my guy Zach Sako of Locked On Nittany Lions. This question came in, and you can submit questions, takes for Spencer's Scale of Agreement, and all of that stuff with YouTube comments, Twitter. Become a Locked On Ducks insider, link in the description below. Hallow Throttle sends this one in. SSOA statement. First of all, when doing acronyms, unless you really need it for it to be a clean acronym, you don't use prepositions. So it's just SSA. But I like where your head's at. SSA statement. This year's Penn State at Oregon game is last year's Ohio State at Oregon game. That said, Spencer rules. Okay, I'm not ruling on that particular part because obvious reasons. I'll let you guys determine that one. But I think for a lot of you, it would be Spencer rules usually, like a solid 7 out of 10 times. Like he's right there. And then those 3 out of the 10, I'm going, oh man. Anyway, so in some respect, yes, that it's Oregon's biggest and clearly toughest game of the year. On paper last year, going into the season, you knew, after Idaho, of course, you knew that Ohio State was going to be Oregon's toughest game. Like last year, I don't know if I did a preseason rank of Oregon's most difficult games. That'd be a good topic to do here in the coming weeks. Anyway, I'll stash that on the back burner. But Ohio State would have been number one. I think Michigan would have been up there. I think Wisconsin would have been up there as well. Ducks had a pretty favorable schedule a season ago. Illinois, I don't think on paper going into last year was someone you would have looked at and said, boy, that could be a tough game for the Ducks. Boise State, of course, you would have put up there because it's Boise. It's always close. But that's the fun part about the season is, people like me, as I talk about over on Locked On College Football all the time, can discuss and assess, hey, here's where this team was at, who they brought in, and where that sets our expectations. It's prediction season over on Locked On College Football, and I love prediction season because that, chef's kiss. It's very, very fun. So I think that for Oregon, it's clearly the toughest game. I do wonder if College Gameday goes there. And I had when I was getting ready for the show, and I had this question in there. I'm scrolling down to look at the other games in college football that week to see what else could be a College Gameday candidate. Because Oregon at Penn State, Big Ten championship rematch, both teams should be undefeated and ranked inside the top 10. Yeah, that's got 2 playoff teams from a year ago. That's got College Gameday written all over it. It's a primetime game, 7:30 Eastern. I think that's prime. Yeah, prime-ish. Like, it's on NBC. It's the whiteout. It's the whiteout, for goodness sake. That is a legitimate contender, man. There is as good a chance it could go there as any. So I'm going through the games and trying to figure out, well, could they get game day? And I'm trying to find one that matches up. And I see, this is a sleeper one. So just keep this in mind because they haven't been there before. USC at Illinois. I'm just don't be shocked if that one I don't think it will because of the game I'll tell you about in a little bit. But I was scrolling down the docket, looking at that, went, it's kind of fun. Like, Champaign can get popping. I respect the Illini, and I like Illinois this year. Illinois is my preseason number 4 team in the Big Ten in my Locked On College Football rankings. But LSU at Ole Miss is a contender. And then I don't know how many of you are Shane Gillis fans out there. I I am a fan of his comedy, but I did just kind of instinctually, when I got down to the bottom of the docket, I just went, oh, because Alabama is at Georgia on September 27th. I mean, there's no wrong answer there. You know, like, do I want game day to be in Happy Valley? Of course I do. And you know what? The whiteout could very easily set the games apart as the determining factor for whether College Game Day goes there, because I mean, the amount of marketing publicity Penn State gets on the whiteout game before, during, and after is well deserved and very well established at this point in the media landscape. So the thing about the Alabama-Georgia game, Alabama will have played Florida State, UL Monroe, and Wisconsin. They should win all three of those games. Georgia could have a loss. Probably not. Georgia's probably 3-0. These are also probably top 10 teams. And now you're just Big Ten versus SEC. Who does ESPN have the contract with? The SEC. That's going to be difficult to beat. Like, maybe Georgia stumbles at Tennessee and takes the shine off the game a little bit. I doubt it, though, because Tennessee, of course, doesn't have Nico. He's at UCLA. But I think this Oregon at Penn State game has certainly got the makings of being as tight as last year. I mean, I think Oregon was a slight dog or slight favorite. It was a sub 3-point spread. I think it might have been a sub 2-point spread last year when they squared off at Autzen Stadium with Ohio State. This game is Oregon plus 4.5 going to Penn State, which I think is the appropriate betting line. Not that that's a huge determining factor for networks or ESPN of, oh, are we going to have College Game Day there? Well, what's the point spread? Like, they're looking at a lot of different things, but if you've got everybody unbeaten there, I would guess they go Alabama at Georgia, but I mean, it's certainly possible. It's no more, if there's a lean towards where they should go, if it's Alabama, Georgia, it's no more than like 55-45. And it's just the SEC factor. And Georgia's going to have a great crowd, and it'll be a great game. And their fans are awesome. They also consider, College Game Day does, they don't go to the same place twice. The same team could be featured twice, but I don't think they've ever gone, or they at least really try to avoid going to the same destination twice. So if Georgia has another game on their schedule that they would want to have in Athens, then that's one, like Georgia against Texas, for instance. Maybe they would rather do that for game day, and it could go there. So in that regard, I don't think I'm hopeful, but not expecting it to be like the Ohio State game. But the place where you are absolutely correct with your remark, and where I put this at, let's call this a 9. This is a 9 on Spencer's scale of agreement, which for my people who've heard a lot of these takes, no, that's a very, very high score. This is a 9. If Oregon goes and wins this game, they will not just be catapulted nationally into the national championship picture, even more than they already were, but in my eyes, this would be a perception-shifting win. And frankly, even more impactful, because last year, it was a weird game. Ohio State got 7 points they shouldn't have, with the, interception that wasn't. And then Oregon kicked the ball off an up man and got 3 points out of it. And maybe they would have gotten 7 if Trayshawn Holden hadn't had the personal foul incident. Like, it was a weird, kind of funky game, and Oregon just found a way to win. If they go on the road and beat Penn State, a game I've said all offseason, I don't think it's impossible Oregon wins the game. Certainly not. I'm not expecting them to win the game. They should be underdogs. They are underdogs, and they will be going into that game. I don't think anything in the first few weeks of the season is going to change that, frankly, for either team. If Oregon goes and wins that game, I'm going to be the happiest eater of crow of all time right here on this show. Because I'll have to say, you know what? I underestimated them a little bit. I didn't think they'd go and win. I thought Penn State does have every advantage you could basically want going into a game like this, but they're at home, they're off a bye, more experienced quarterback, higher returning production rate from a season ago. Like, they've got all the advantages in there. But if Oregon goes and wins that game, my hope will shift into de facto expectations. I hope Oregon makes a run to the national championship game this year. Last year, I had an expectation that they were going to make a run to the national championship game. There's a difference between those two things. So in that sense, it is the same. And that's why that's a 9 on Spencer's scale of agreement. I do not give out scores like that very easily. That was a good one. That was a good one. Just like talking about that game is getting me more and more excited for that football game, or any football game, quite frankly. So, more on the way. Plenty more on the way. What if Oregon does have a Heisman finalist? All right, keeping it rolling with Spencer's scale of agreement. This is from one of my Locked On Ducks insiders out there. If we have any Ducks in the Heisman race, we will have made the semifinals. This is my SSA proposal. Ooh. Well, the most likely to be in the Heisman race at any time is your quarterback. So he's not the only guy. He's kind of the only guy. Like maybe Mateo goes crazy. Mateo could go crazy, have a Heisman finalist caliber season for a defensive end. I think the last defensive end to be a Heisman finalist was obviously defensive player, primary defensive player, won it last year in Travis Hunter, but I believe Aiden Hutchinson was a Heisman finalist for Michigan. I might have that wrong, but if he has that sort of season, Oregon could still hit their floor. It's not as likely. He certainly helps a whole heck of a lot, but the quarterback situation could be a mess. The running game doesn't ever, take a step forward like I was talking about earlier, and Mateo could still go crazy. But the most likely Heisman finalist for Oregon this year would be Dante Moore. I don't place that expectation on him in his first year starting. Next year, probably. But presuming he comes back, of course. And if he is legitimately in the Heisman race, Oregon will have made the semifinal. That's a 7. That's a real solid set. If he's playing at that high of a level, then, like I said earlier, Dante Moore's a bigger question to me than the rest of the roster holistically. So, yeah, that's a 7 that Oregon would get to the semis, which would be pretty great. That'd be pretty great, seeing as they only got to the quarters last year, of course. This is one from 93 Aguiar, Aguiar, I guess. Question: with Ross Douglas being the passing game coordinator, will Oregon air it out a lot more this season? Well, as I've discussed now twice on the show today, the running game numbers haven't been spectacularly incredible over the last couple of years, going down each year from what it was the season prior. I think by air it out more, you're talking about downfield passing, because Oregon's yards per attempt with their quarterbacks the last couple of years, not among the highest in college football. Doesn't mean explosive plays aren't out there to be had. And they have been there several times, and when they've needed to be in some instances over the last couple of years with this Will Stein offense. Will they air it out more? Their personnel lets them do whatever they want. Like, I wouldn't look at this question and think, nah, they don't have the ability to go down the field. I can give you 3 receivers off the top of my head who I feel pretty good about winning 50-50-ish balls down the field. And Kenyon Sadiq is one of them, by the way. Kenyon Sadiq, DeCorian Moore, Justice Lowe, Jurion Dickey can probably do it. Kyler Casper's got a huge frame. I don't know if Gary Bryant's a big contested catch guy. He hasn't been yet in his Oregon career. Doesn't mean he's incapable. I don't think that's ever really been his game necessarily, though. But I think that for this Ducks passing attack, they have the weapons and tools, as long as Dante Moore is what we think he's going to be whatever they want or to be whatever they need to be. And when you've had as much success as Oregon's had offensively over the last couple of years, particularly with the quarterbacks, you took the 2 most experienced quarterbacks in the history of college football and you gave them the best seasons of their careers and put them in New York City. I don't know that Will Stein is going to bring in a less experienced but still incredibly talented quarterback and say, all right, I'm going to go change the formula now. We got to change it all. We can't do it the way we did with these guys. if anything, there are throws Dante Moore can make Dillon Gabriel couldn't last year. I think you'll see Dante Moore use the middle of the field a bit more because he's not as short as Dillon. Dillon Gabriel is not a big dude. And small guys can play quarterback. I'm a Seahawks fan. I watched Russell Wilson do it for quite a long time. But, I think there were some times last year where Gabriel's reliance on outside throws, because it's easier to see than over the middle, maybe got keyed in on a little bit. Like a number of his tendencies, if you go back and watch the Rose Bowl film against Ohio State, Jim Knowles, knew what he wanted to do and what Will Stein wanted him to do, and kind of had like their game plan, Jim Knowles' game plan, who's of course now Penn State's defensive coordinator. It was pretty flawless. Like across the board, it was really, really good. So no, if I turn this into Spencer's scale of agreement, I'll put it at 3 because I have the personnel to do it. I just don't think Will Stein is suddenly going to fix something just because of, one game against Ohio State where the offense didn't perform the way you expect them to. The other game against the eventual national champions, they did and put up 32 points. So no, I don't think they're going to suddenly, air it out and look like 2023 Washington or 2019 LSU or Mike Leach's teams, RIP Pirate, or Mike Leach's teams, with the air raid or anything like that. So wrapping up with some Duck trivia today. This is going to become a regular thing until we get back in season, because obviously I love the Ducks and I love me some trivia. For those who tuned in last week, the answers to the trivia questions that I had on the show. Oregon's most common bowl opponent all time, Ohio State. They've matched up on 4 occasions. 3 have been in pretty big time games. 7 coaches have led Oregon to bowl games. The 1 overtime bowl game was that stupid Alamo Bowl. Gosh, that game was horrible, just horrible. Oregon won 9 Pac-12 and 10 titles in their history. RIP Pac-12, forever and always. 4 times, and by the way, I got to correct myself. I thought Dillon Gabriel finished behind Cam Ward in Heisman voting. He finished 3rd and Ward was 4th. I thought those two were flip-flop. Oregon has 4 players to finish top 3 in the Heisman voting all time, 8 players in the College Football Hall of Fame, 6 in the NFL Hall of Fame. So those are the answers. So I'll read a couple questions, trivia questions here at the end. You guys can try and answer them. You can ignore the segment. You do whatever you like. But I love trivia, and I think it's a fun thing to do. So, and then I'll give you the answers the next day on the show. Rear Duck sent this one in. Dan Lanning is the second Oregon coach to win both of his first 2 bowl appearances. Who was the first? Definitely not Chip Kelly. Well, Cristobal coached in the Vegas Bowl, so I guess if that counts, then probably not. Taggart obviously didn't have 2 bowl appearances. Lanning won his first 2 bowl appearances. Right, because that's the first part of the question. So it's either Bellotti, Rich Brooks, or Len Casanova. I'll go with Bellotti. I'll go with Mike Bellotti on that one. All right, couple quick ones then. When was the first 10-win season in Oregon history, and when was the first 11-win season in Oregon history? Ooh. And by the way, I'm not coming up with these questions, by the way. You can send them to me as long as you send me the answer the next day as well. People are sending these in. First 10. Well, they definitely won 11 games with Joey Harrington. That was... This is where my age is killing me here. Because I know that happened, but I wasn't alive for it, so it's harder for me to remember. I'm going to go 2001. I think it's the same year. I think it's the same season, and I think it's 2001 is the answer for both. I hope I'm right. If I'm right on that, I'm going to be so happy. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.